at the Focus Practice Management Studios, live and in person, Danya. That's right. No.
Let's take it from the top.
From the top.
From the tippy top.
Welcome to 6 Minute Increments, where we look at the interplay between business, the law, and our ongoing series here with young lawyers. Welcome, Danya. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and who are you?
Wow, that's such an
That's a deep
existential question.
Very, very deep.
So I'm Danya. I was born and raised in Rochester, unlike our two hosts who are transplants.
Correct.
Oh.
We are non-locals.
Non-locals.
Yep.
But
All you Rochesterians leave and come back.
I did leave and come back. And I actually didn't expect to come back to Rochester. So I went to...
None of you do.
They never do, but
No.
they don't know how good they have it.
And then they always come back.
Yeah, it just pulls you in. Also, rent prices did, pull me in. So I was in Albany for college and for law school, and I was like, I'm not coming back to Rochester. I want to stay in Albany. I really liked Albany. It is very similar to Rochester, though, but I think I liked that it was just something different. But I ended up getting the job at Pullano and Farrow, and that's what brought me back.
Because you did go to the best law school, which was?
Albany Law School.
Albany Law School, that's right. Albany Law.
Yes. And I really enjoyed law school. I mean, it was definitely, I always say it's like the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most rewarding thing I've ever done. I think when I tell people about my experience in law school, that's what I always say. Because I know some people, when they ask them like, oh, I'm thinking about law school, do you recommend it? Some people, like Brett, are like, no, you shouldn't go to law school. Don't do it. Begrudgingly. But that's how I always explain my experience in law school.
What would you tell a current college student sitting at SUNY Albany in the purple and gold? What would you tell them to prepare them for law school? What's it like? What do you say to these people?
Well, I mean, I think also a lot of people, when they ask me, like, how do I prepare for law school, they kind of want, like, a set, like, regimen or a set, like, list of instructions. But I don't think there's really, it sounds scary, but there's really nothing that truly prepares you for law school until you're kind of, like, thrown in it, like the baby in the bathwater kind of thing.
Same is true for the rest of life.
Yes.
too, so.
No, and just, like, practice. Like, you're just
Yeah.
kind of, like, thrown in. I would say a piece of advice is that, like, which is going to sound ironic because I'm giving advice, but also when you start law school or you're looking into law school, people will give you a lot of advice, but you should only really take like maybe like 2% of that. Law school is very different for everyone, and I think people give a lot of advice, but how you learn as a person, how you grow is very dependent on how you process information. So I think that's what I would say is like think about what works best for you. And what your goals are with law school. I think sometimes people think about law school because they have a certain idea of what the law looks like or goals they have within themselves, but it may not align with the reality of what law school and like what practice looks like.
To what extent does the practice of law align with what you imagined it to be?
Oh, that's a really good question. Honestly, I think in law school, I didn't realize like one major thing is like management wise, like how much of that you have to do in practice. Like, I don't think that's something I really learned as much or like had the experience with.
And when you say management, like what do you mean by management?
So when I say management, like that encompasses client management and like team management, like the internal team. So like legal assistants, paralegals, other attorneys, and even like partners. Because as an associate, like my job,
We're unmanageable. I feel bad for everybody stuck with managing us.
But because it's like, there's the clients, those are the official clients, they're the external clients, but as an associate, I have internal clients, and that's you guys, like the partners. So that's not something I knew prior to practice. And then the skill of managing a team is something that I didn't really know about much or had much work with until I started. And I think learning how to manage expectations and personalities is something I didn't really think about how significant that would be in the practice of law. So
how would you relate that to, say, law students that are starting out? If you're a first-year law student, what do you tell them about You're now how long have you been practicing?
Well, I got my license in January, so
There you go. So you've been doing this a little while. What would you go back and tell law students about what the real world is like and what they should be focused on?
I think they should look into classes that offer skills. Like there's a lot of skills courses I took in law school, like there's client counseling, there's negotiation. I think taking classes like that would be very helpful because you get real world experience, or taking the time to do an internship as much as you can, like just having as much real world experience as possible to like help soften the transition to when you start practice. I also think they should know that not to have like a certain set expectation of like what they want to do, because your mind could change. Like I didn't really know what kind of law I wanted to do when I started law school, so I think keeping an open mind is really important. I didn't expect to go into healthcare law. I kind of fell into it and I really enjoyed it. So I would just say like, keep an open mind and know that like everyone else is going through the experience too. It's like a huge learning process for everyone. So, and maybe I would tell a first year law student or myself not to be super critical of myself throughout the process, because it gets very easy in law school because everyone's kind of in that hive mind of being like, oh, I didn't do this right, I didn't do that right.
Hive mind.
Yes.
Yeah, I see
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, or like, after exams, people are like, oh, I want to talk, like, what did you think of that exam? What did you do on this question? I didn't partake in that because I think it just stressed me out personally. So I would just tell someone like, focus on yourself and what works best for you, and don't succumb to like the hive mind. Don't succumb to like what other people are doing or telling you, because that works for them. It may not work for you.
How about the business side? Since you've gotten into the practice of law, it's no longer an academic pursuit, but your actual career. What have you found most interesting or difficult that you weren't prepared for?
So that's a good question. So it's funny because when you're in law school and you have like an essay question, for example, like you have a set of facts and you just kind of have to deal with the set of facts and the question you have and answering that. Whereas like in practice, like I know sometimes when we're talking about like a client has an issue, we don't just have to look at like, the regulatory issues. We have to look at like, well, what about the business implications for the client? If we do something like this, like it's more of like a holistic scope. And that's not something I even thought about in law school, like the business practice of law or like the management of that. I think it's maybe because I didn't expect to go into private practice. And I think the benefit of being at a smaller firm is I kind of get to see more of what you guys have to do in terms of managing the firm and like making business decisions and how that implicates me as an associate. I didn't expect that before. I thought I'd be working in like, nonprofit or government work. Whereas like working in those spaces, like I wouldn't have seen that much, like that side of the law.
How about with clients? What is their thought about you that maybe you didn't anticipate?
I think, something that really shocked me was how, I don't want to say how much they're willing to trust me, but like how much they're like, oh, like, no, tell me more about this. Like, could you help? Like, just knowing that like they put their full faith into me, and it's like, wait, yeah, I'm the attorney. Like, they're supposed to do that. Right. But I just think it's like, it's a jarring experience, like when you first start, because they're like, they have these expectations for you, and I'm like, oh, like the client has these expectations for me. Like, I have to make sure I live up to them because it's my job as their advocate to make sure like I find solutions for them. And even if I will say something that's kind of difficult though, is like when clients have an expectation, and I know based off, what I've seen and looked at and what we've discussed, like that's probably not realistic for them, and sort of managing that expectation of being like, oh, I know we're looking for XYZ, but instead based off the law and based off the work I've done, let's maybe look into a different direction. And I think sometimes some clients look at you as their attorney and they're like, I want this and I want a yes man. But because I am their advocate for them, but at the same time, like I can't enable them if it's going to harm them in any way, like legally or regulatorily. So I think managing that balance is like one of the harder parts about that.
How about other lawyers? Dealing with other lawyers that you call on the phone on behalf of your client.
I would say it's definitely interesting because I think I'm also younger. So I think my interaction with other attorneys from the other side sometimes is certainly a process because, I've just started, so I'm trying to like find my footing. And especially if they have a lot of experience, I think sometimes they assume like, oh, this is a younger attorney. I can kind of like, I'm going to get my way. I can kind of like wiggle around. I mean, there are attorneys I've worked with from the other side. They were very nice. They were very flexible. They were willing to like work together and compromise pretty well. But I think I have had some experiences where I felt like, okay, I think they assume that like, I'm just going to let them have their way. And it's like, no, like, I'm not going to do that. Like, or even though there are other attorneys with a lot of experience, I think I first assume like, oh, they know so much. Like, maybe like you kind of just like subconsciously let them take the lead. But there have been times where other attorneys have said things and I'm like, wait, actually, that's wrong. That's not true. So I've had kind of like step up for myself and realize like, okay, so just because someone, may have a lot of experience or may, have a lot of knowledge about something, that doesn't necessarily mean they're always right. And I shouldn't defer to them automatically.
Now, one thing that Elizabeth and I, we know we push heavily, but I guess to what extent in your practical life, now doing this work, have you found that AI, the technology, has even shifted from when you were not that long ago in law school?
I mean, when I was in law school, I didn't realize how quickly AI was like infiltrating the legal sphere. Like when I first started, like I knew like, oh yeah, like AI, like people are using it. But I didn't realize until I started practicing, like it's really starting to like entrench itself in practice. I do think there are some difficulties, especially now that like clients are interacting with AI in a way.
One guy, he just filed a whole bunch of lawsuits
Yup.
using AI, got sent around this morning to us.
Yeah, so I think it's hard because, the AI can like, it can absorb a ton of information and it could produce a product, but at the same time, like it does enable whatever the user wants or says. It's trying to like please the person that's using it. So I think that's also kind of setting a client expectation problem where the clients are coming in and they're like, well, I asked ChatGPT this and it says it can do this for me. And so you kind of have to manage that with them and say like, right, but based off the research I've done and from what I've seen, that's not true. And I think, which I understand, because for them, it's like the law, they're unfamiliar to it, which like most people are. And even as an attorney, like there's so much law we're learning every single day and that we're still...
Well, it changes. There's all those politicians passing new ones all the time.
Yeah, and especially now in this time, like the law's like consistently changing so fast, like we can't even keep up.
Every year,
So,
they pass new laws.
yep,
All of them.
yep.
State, federal, county, city,
Right.
never ending.
Yeah, it's never... So, for a client, it's like, well, I can talk to, AI and it can tell me an answer quickly and efficiently and for free. But at the same time, like you as the attorney, you kind of, I think it's also part of like building a relationship with a client, like building trust so they can like step away from the AI. And, I've seen some documents with AI on it from like outside and I've had to be like, oh, well, we can't use that.
How do you see, as you're on the forefront of this, I mean, we will be able to escape to some degree early first quarter of the AI renaissance. You will spend your career with this as a tool. How are you seeing that you're building this in to help work with clients? Or where do you see it as a useful tool for you with clients?
I think it helps as a tool to like supplement in terms of like if I'm not super familiar with something, it can kind of give me like a bit of a foundation to work with if I'm not super familiar on a topic. Or, if the client is like, oh, like they send me a document or send me something and it's like been used with AI, it kind of helps me like decode that and gives me something to like work with. So
how have you seen that clients have used this effectively with you? I don't know if you've had any experiences. I've had experiences with clients who've used it. I mean, have you seen anybody come to you having used AI and it made your interaction more effective?
Client-wise, I wouldn't say I've personally seen that. I think sometimes it's like been the opposite where, AI was used and it didn't produce the correct product or didn't bring all the best results, I would say. But I was wondering, in your practice, have you seen that?
I have. I've actually been able to use, and I guess this is where if they're going to use the tool, we've got our own sets of tools. So I've used our tools to respond to theirs and help clarify it in ways that I think speed up the process. I also have seen that some clients have used it to ask very good legal questions. They've used it to prepare them for the conversation with the lawyer. And I think that elevates the conversation. There's less of the background, so it shortens the overall time that we're spending together. But I do think that the AI has a tendency, and people forget this, it wants to please you. So it's going to always phrase things in ways that they want to hear. And I think the problem that lawyers will face in this environment is we're not there to tell you what you want to hear. We're there to tell you what you need to hear. And when we contradict what you want to hear, that's where I do think the relationship building plays a bigger role in getting them to actually work with you. So how do you think, in your experience so far, which isn't that long, but as you're thinking about it, I guess I'm curious, I'm well down the path at this point. How do you see that you're going to be building these relationships with clients in this digital age where maybe you're not seeing them as much? I think most of our practice is now virtual telephone calls through Microsoft Teams. How do you think, theoretically, I guess, you're going to build those bonds and relationships of the future?
I think the biggest thing is making sure the clients feel heard and making sure that like I'm available to them. I mean, obviously everyone is very busy, and like as an attorney, like my schedule is only going to be more and more and more and more intense, as I'm sure it is for the two of you. But I think making sure like when clients reach out, making sure they feel heard. And even if like I may not have the answer to a question, I always say, I'm like, okay, I'm not too sure about that, but I'll get back to you. I'll do some research. I'll ask someone here, just so they feel like I've taken their questions into consideration. And I think it's also tough too, because, you know, you're building a relationship with a stranger essentially, like a lot, like they're putting a lot of trust, and there's a lot of trust, and there's a lot of, you know, hope that clients are putting into you, because they're like, I have this problem. And most people don't want to see an attorney, because usually it's like,
we're fun. We're delightful people.
yeah, usually, but delightful until there's a real problem. And then it's like, oh, I've talked to an attorney about this. So I think, like I said earlier, like the biggest thing is being available and being honest with them, and not setting unrealistic expectations. And like you said, like being honest with them, not enabling them, like being honest enough to say, like, I know you're looking for this result, but that's not that realistic. That's probably not as feasible, or that's not within the price point you're looking for. So I think the biggest things is being honest with them, being communicative, and knowing how to also adjust based off the client. Like, not all the clients are the same. You know, like I can already tell usually, like, whereas some clients are not big on email, you know, they want a phone call, and being flexible to that. I've never felt like, oh, they don't have a phone call, like, oh, we have to talk on the phone now. Like, no, I'm always flexible to that, because everyone's different. I'm actually a phone caller myself, so I never had an issue with that.
You mentioned about being a lawyer now. To what extent has your family and friends all started asking you every question under the sun?
Yeah,
because you've gone to law school
and for help with their speeding tickets.
Tickets.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot in my personal life. Like, that's happened quite often. Even like a friend of my mom's actually like contacted me like 2 weeks ago for something, and my family and friends, they have so many questions. And sometimes it is fun when it's something I know, like especially working in corporate, like with companies and with businesses, like when they're like, if I want to start my own business, like, can I do this? And I'm like, oh yeah, you can do that. So it is fun. There are times though where it's like, I have to say like, so I don't litigate, so I'm not going to be in court. And sometimes even I kind of have to like interrupt and be like, they're already kind of starting off with a question like, so what if you're in court? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to be litigating. I'm also not a criminal attorney. I don't do that.
Right. Those are the fun ones.
Right.
I got a criminal question. Okay, well, you need a different lawyer.
Yeah, so I usually say, I'm like, well, you need a different lawyer, and I hope you're not planning on committing any crimes soon.
Right. I
so,
cannot assist you in that endeavor.
yeah, sorry, you're going to have to go to someone else for that. So, I mean, I think also being in corporate and being in healthcare, like those are kind of two areas that a lot of people don't really have a lot of familiarity with. So I understand, like, people usually aren't going to ask, like, so, like, what are the implications of the Stark Law on this?
So, I mean, I can even say up front, I just had an experience with my wife. She went off, used AI to do legal research. But as a layperson, not as a lawyer, very knowledgeable if it was on a healthcare issue, she would use the AI correctly. She used it completely wrong and got a completely inaccurate answer. So then I, at least, and this goes back to I'm answering for her questions outside, somewhat outside of the scope of what I normally answer, but I was able to use the AI tools that we have to better vet her question, still saying we would want to go get somebody more knowledgeable. Have you tried or had that experience yet where they're asking you questions outside of your normal sphere? You're like, I don't quite do that, but used it to maybe educate them slightly, fill the gaps, because you have more knowledge in the background, maybe how to ask the right questions. Right. And I think the AI reacts well when you're asking the right questions.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest difference too with like AI being used by a layperson versus an attorney. Like we have the skills and the knowledge to kind of like decipher and like even like check the AI, like where it may not be as right or where it might be interpreting something incorrectly. So I think bridging that gap for a layperson as an attorney would be helpful for them because they don't know. Because they could be asking a question and like even looking at the language they're using or the phrasing, just from like reading the question, sometimes I'm like, okay, so this is not going to give you what you're looking for. And it's just trying to like piece together the words as they're next to each other, but it's not reading it as a whole. So I think that's when our job is to step in and like find the right way to ask those questions and find those answers with the tools we have and the knowledge we have together.
No, I don't think that lawyers generally are the best at this, and our one partner is probably the worst at this. You said you wanted to make yourself available to the clients. How do you envision in this much more technologically connected world, and I think we've always struggled with this, being available to them, but still having a boundary that allows you to not burn out? I think our profession is rife with people that burn out. And how do you see as you start out, and we'll come back in a few years, we'll look at you and see, how much gray is falling in. For males, it just falls out. What do you see as the challenge? Meeting that availability, but at the same time, retaining your sanity.
Yes. So it's funny because you bring that up with the rise of technology, but I'm actually going to say that like the most helpful tool has been a human being, which is like my legal assistant or like the paralegals. Like they're really helpful because, when I first started, it's like a client would email me and I'm like, oh, I have to respond immediately. I have to be the person to respond. But, it was like my legal assistant that reminded me like, hey, they're just asking to set up a meeting. I can do this. Like, you don't need to respond to them. It's my job to do that. And so, especially with the paralegals too, like a lot of times because clients, again, they don't have that legal knowledge, so they may not have a specific legal question, but if we've done filing on their behalf, they'll be like, oh, what's the status of this? Like, could you let me know? Has that been filed? And so that's something where the paralegals are really good at that because that's their job, is like the filing and taking care of those things for the client. And that's when I've been like, okay, actually, I don't need to respond. Like, I can have them respond to the client. Because as long as like I may not be responding to them, but if someone is responding to them that's on the same team as me, that signals to the client like, okay, like my needs are being met, my needs are being responded to. And it's hard because you don't want them to feel like they're not being cared for, but at the same time, like you said, like this profession is very quick to burn people out to a crisp and doesn't really teach people how to set hard boundaries. Clients can email you, they can call you like way late at night, and you can't really be like, don't call me, don't contact me. You can't really put them on do not disturb like that. Because they're also paying for your time. They're paying for your services. Right. So in a way, they are entitled to that. But at the same time, like you can't let that like fester. So I think knowing when and where to respond and who to respond is like the biggest thing to set that boundary with them.
I know that we always need to be conscious of always be billing, but at the same time, I guess now you're in a little ways. We'll bring you back at some point to see whether your prediction is accurate. But where do you see the next 2 to 3 years of your life leading you in your career in ways you anticipate, so that you're kind of leaving your time capsule here for the future? Where do you see yourself 3 years from now as a lawyer?
Leave a message for Danya in 2030.
Yeah.
Wow. 2030 already?
2030. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
4
that's
years.
kind of... That just set
The
me back a
2030
bit.
version of you.
2030 version of myself.
What message do you have for that, Danya?
Hope you're doing well first. In this profession still. I would say, like, I think what I want the next couple years to be is just me building the skills and building good habits for the rest of my practice. I know they say, I think you've even said this to me, like...
I stole it from Christian Valentino.
Oh.
I'll give credit where it's
To
due.
Christian Valentino. Where, like, the first 3, 4, 5 years of your practice, that's where you're building, like, lifelong habits and skills, whether good or bad. So I hope that, I've built good skills and I've maintained them. And I hope that I'm either in the same place or I've moved beyond somewhere. I'm the type of person, like, I never want to stay stagnant in something. Like, I want to consistently grow. Even if it's in the same place, like, I want to reach the next level consistently. So, and I hope I'm still enjoying this profession as much as I am now. I hope that I'm expanding also, like, my skill set in terms of the areas of law I'm practicing in. I think kind of like dipping my toes in more expansive areas would be really beneficial for me. So I hope I get the opportunity to do that, and I'm doing that.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, I look forward to the 2030 version of you.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Only a few people will get that reference.
It's okay with me.
I didn't even get that reference.
It's okay with me.
Did you want to explain the reference
No,
for the
no.
audience?
Go look it up
If
on
you know,
YouTube.
you know.
If you
In the
know, you know.
meantime-
I don't know.
Please like, share, subscribe, share with your friends, and share with your enemies.
Yes.
Oh.
Always remember the enemies.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
guys.